Okay, what's on the horizon? What is next week?
That is the demonstration speech. So
Woo!
all of your class time, if you're in the night class or if you're in Lab A and Lab B, will be spent completing the peer evaluation forms and watching the demo speeches.
And for you, it'll be spent grading those demonstration speeches live, baby, in action, right there in the moment. So we will talk a little bit in more detail next week about how to facilitate it as far as like, how to bring up your videos and how to make sure that everybody gets seen or whatever, how to facilitate peer evaluations. But as far as like if it's on the horizon, if it's for next week, the prep for this week is probably just to get really familiar with the rubric. So that next week at our staff meeting, we can grade one together and that you've already really seen it, not glanced at it, but really read it, spent some time with it, wrapped your mind around it. So this video, we're going to go into the rubric item by item. So this would be a good moment to pause this video and bring up the rubric so that you can see it while we're talking.
Right. And so I think we're going to just go through the rubric itself. And if you are somebody who just would prefer to read it, that's at your discretion as well. So I don't necessarily know if you need to listen to this talk if you are going to like dig in and read it and make sure you know it, because we're going to grade next week. But if you're somebody who's like, I would prefer to listen, you can. Okay, so remember, every speech has 2 emphasized skills. And each one of those is worth 25 points. So this week this assignment, it's audience centeredness and visual aids.
So for this one, you have 4 choices: impressive, effective, passable, and miss the mark. And what you're going to need to do is decide of those 4 categories, and there's a ton of text there, you're going to decide which one best represents what you saw, right? Where it's like, okay, there were 4 sentences there, and on these 3 sentences it was effective, and on this one it was passable. That's probably effective overall. It's closest to effective.
Right.
So it's a judgment call. But for example, on audience centeredness, we have this topic is exceptionally appropriate for the attended audience. The message is crafted exceptionally well in a way that demonstrates centering the needs and experiences of the audience, choosing language that consistently enhances audience comprehension. The speaker delivers the speech in a manner that captivates an audience, stimulates their interest, and cultivates shared enthusiasm for both the content of the speech and the relationship between audience and speaker. Speech can be described as extremely audience-centered.
Right, okay. So let's break that down. So first has to do with the topic. And so I think if you have a topic that is not challenging enough, then you would maybe not put
Impressive.
that as exceptionally appropriate. So if they are doing something that you think a college-age student would not Google how to do, then it's probably not going to fit into this category. And then the second one seems to do with language.
So really good word choices prepared in advance instead of kind of fumbling for the words as you go.
Yeah, I think that's also that they're choosing transition words that are like very helpful. And so if they do a lot of signposting, if they say, now after that you're going to do this next, that would be an important part of the language for me.
And then I think you should think about whether or not you were captivated, because that's the difference between exceptional and what's the second category? Effective, right? And so where exceptional is, it captivates an audience and stimulates their interest. The effective category, on the other hand, is that mostly invites the audience's attention and stimulates their interest. So it's like, yeah, they did some things to try to kind of get the audience listening, but you wouldn't describe it as captivating.
And that's with regard a lot to their delivery, don't you think?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know when something is really dazzling and when something was fine, pretty decent, and it was like not bad, right? And so to kind of look at the differentiating language that goes between one category and the next, and between effective and passable, and between passable. If you say miss the mark, that's not a student getting 0 on that. That's them getting half credit, right? So when you say miss the mark, what you're saying it was failing, but not 0 credit, right? But it is not passing then. So if the topic is not appropriate and or content fails to focus on a specific audience, that the message construction does not demonstrate consideration for the needs and experiences, etc.
Yeah, so I think that in this one, often they can like talk above everybody's heads, so it's like they either chose a topic that's not possible, so they chose something so simplistic that you were like, we don't need a speech on this, so that wasn't audience centered, or they chose something so hyper complex that at the end I'm more confused than I was before they gave the speech.
Or if they chose a topic that is not a demonstration. So if it's more of an explanation rather than allowing, like I keep thinking of that example of a speech that would have been okay if I asked for an explanation on how to survive in the wild. But there was nothing in it that demonstrated anything. And so that is not thinking of my audience's needs and experiences. My needs was to be shown how to do something, and instead they kind of talked around, you know, it was more of an informative speech straight up, but not a demonstrating one.
Right. Good.
Okay, visual aids, it's the same thing. Impressive, effective, passable, or miss the mark. So you're going to, again, look at the differentiation between what was actually impressive and effective, or effective versus passable.
Yeah, and so this one deals a lot with choices. You know, it has to do with like the choices they made about their visual aids, both like what they are and then how they manage them. And so if you have somebody who has a demonstration speech but doesn't actually like use their visual aids, so we talk about how they employ them is what makes something exceptional. Like, did they make exceptional choices when they employed them? How and when? So sometimes it is like the way in which they demonstrated with the visual aid, or they could have used more time, like if they didn't show them when they should have showed them.
Or if they kind of shortcut and it's like, well, you were making spaghetti and you had an empty box of spaghetti because you didn't have the noodles, then that wouldn't be effective. That would be maybe passable. You know, it's like they have to actually have the things that they're saying, that it's not substitutes for the things they're saying. And in general, with both of these two, as well as every emphasized skill for the rest of the semester, I would be careful of just your default being to assign impressive. Impressive is, it's communicating to the student, this was above and beyond, because it's a perfect score. That's 25 out of 25. And so you're really saying their use of visual aids was perfection. Chef kiss. And if you're not trying to communicate chef kiss, then your default is probably like effective. And if it was less than effective, then was it passable or missing the mark? And if it was more than effective, that's when it was impressive.
Yeah, so especially because in each one of them, you know, there are plenty of things like, did they have it or did they not? Like, we're okay. So there could be a speech where it's like, have a visual aid, yes or no, that they get credit for doing it. But just having the visual aid is not what we're trying to give them feedback on.
Okay, so then those are the emphasized skills. You're just making judgment calls, which category does it go into. For the rest of these items, it's a little bit more objective. Either they did it or they didn't, and to some extent, maybe on some of them, they did it, or they kind of did it, or they didn't.
Yes.
Right? And so for some of the points, it works out to be like 0 if you didn't do it, because it was that important, that if they didn't have an attention getter, that's going to be a 0 out of 5. And on others, if they didn't do it, then it's maybe still going to be half credit out of 5. That it's a note, but it's not going to like really hurt their grade, because we are not trying to communicate that is of the utmost importance. It's just a thing to have, a thing to think about.
Right, and so I think about like attention getter. So we say that did they have an attention getter, and that attention getter is not, hi, my name is Mary, and I'm going to talk about this. That we are really reinforcing the idea of it's like all or nothing. You can't begin with your name and your topic and then say something creative, but that you're going to start with the first sentence out of your mouth is an attention getter.
Because it says began with attention getter. So if they begin with something else other than the attention getter, like, hi, I'm Ashley Coker, I'm in section 226, and this is my demonstration speech about how to play Clue.
Yep, that'd be a 0
That's
out
a
of
0.
5. And so and I think that some people may be like, oh, it feels so harsh. It's not really. It's like 5 out of 150. But we want it to be all or nothing, so that by the end, that they're like, okay, I'm not losing those 5 points again by beginning with something other than what I have planned as an attention getter.
Okay, the next one is the introduction function to stimulate interest and prepare audience for the speech. That's a pretty general, it's basically saying like, did the intro do the job of an intro? So did it seem interesting, and did it make the audience want to see more? So we're not saying did they have a credibility statement and did they have a preview. If it's okay if they didn't like preview the main points. We haven't covered intros yet, so it's more, did it stimulate interest and did it prepare the audience for the speech?
Right, so did the audience understand that they're getting ready to watch a demonstration, that the goal of the speech is I'm going to learn how to do something new?
And did they amp up interesting or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
valuable it could be. Okay, and then were the intro and conclusion distinct from the body? What we're trying to help students avoid is when the intro mushes together with the body, and before you know it, we're on the second main point, and we didn't even know the intro was over, that there should be some closure between, okay, so that was the introduction. Here we go. So, step one.
Yep.
You know?
So, and because it asks for the conclusion in this, it's that we need a clear, like, intro, body, conclusion. And so the expectation is, as a college level student, that they know that all writing has an intro, body, and conclusion. All speaking should have an intro, body, and conclusion.
And that those are distinct from each other, that they shouldn't blend. So it's like, a lot of times I think what I see the most often is that students finish the last step and they say, so that's pretty much it. That would not be a conclusion distinct from the body. That really is like the conclusion blended into the body.
Right, and this one, it's like 5 points for yep and 2.5 for no. So they don't lose all of the points if one of them blended with the other one. So it's not as harsh of a penalty as the attention getter.
And then similar to the one about the intro, the next one is conclusion, reinforces message and offers closure. So it doesn't necessarily have to have a review. It doesn't necessarily have to, re-emphasize their main idea, but does it reinforce the message somewhere in it and provide some closure?
Yeah, so that no one is like, oh wait, the camera, okay, we're clapping, right? So it needs to be clear that it's the end. Okay, the next one is chronological organization. So that is the pattern that we want them to use. And so it asks, did they use it or did they not?
So it should have steps in order, like a first step, a second step, a third step, and a final step. And maybe they didn't always give you those signposts, but that it went in order, not like 5 unrelated things to think about. You're going to need to think about your supplies and your storage and your technique, right? Because those are not chronological. That would be a topical order. So it needs to be the first thing you do, the second thing you do, and the last thing you do.
And the next one is, and so that's a yep or nope. So if they used a different organizational pattern, that would be in the nope category, but it's still half credit. So parts of the process are framed memorably.
We talked a little bit in my video. I talked about how you're going to want to tag your main points as making it so the audience could remember and repeat the process. So did they attempt to do that? Even if they weren't actually memorable, were they framed memorably? That is, like, the student did something to frame these as easy to remember, easy to repeat, whether it's as simple as 1, 2, 3, or ABC, or stop, drop, and roll.
Right.
Or
if they used an acronym.
Right, maybe there was an acronym, but did they do something to make it memorable? Whether it worked or not is kind of beside the point.
Yeah, is the attempt. And that has a kind of category. So, you might be like, well, they kind of did it, but then they forgot, like they introduced it using something, but then they didn't like reinforce it in the body. So you're like, I don't, maybe that's a kind of.
If you think of the demo that we show in class that we sent, at the TED Talk, he does shake and fold about 8 times, right? So that would be framed memorably. It is intended that the audience would remember. And he even says, you're never going to forget shake and fold. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Process presented with appropriate detail and clarity, choosing words that are vivid, clear, and appropriate. So that one are they giving you enough? Is it developed enough? Did they give enough detail? What do they mean when they say grill it to medium rare? Do they say you're going to want to leave it on for approximately 4 minutes on each side? And you're going to make sure before you do that your grill is at exactly 350 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right, and it's making sure to use like not words like thing. So then you're going to take this thing and you're going to put it through that.
Through here, yeah. And then like kind of like this. We see a lot of abstractions on demonstrations. This, here, kind of.
Yeah. So you're going to, they're going to want to be precise with their language and intentional so that you are going to loop the yarn. You're going to put the needle through the third loop. I don't know anything about crocheting, but then you would pull it through instead of being like, well, you kind of do this thingy. That's, yeah.
Okay. And then the next 2 are about delivery. So body used effectively and voice used effectively. So we've given examples of the body, eyes, face, gestures, posture, etc., but we haven't covered delivery yet. So just their use of physical delivery. Was it yes effective, kind of effective, or no effective? And then vocally, so their rate, their volume, their quality, their articulation, etc.
Yeah, those are pretty holistic evaluations of them, and I do think that the nope category is the space where it is clear to you that maybe a student has not prepared or is not committed to what they are saying, more than it being I think we will evaluate critically later on delivery. And so, but it is helpful for you to give accurate feedback so they know where their growth is. And so, I think the kind of will be a more attractive option on this one. But you're going to have skilled speakers, so there are going to be plenty of speakers who are, yes, it was used effectively.
Right, but the nope would be reserved. I'm thinking of a student who we never got to see them, so there is no physical delivery. It was all voiceover. They just chose to never show us their face, so there's zero eye contact, there's zero gestures, there's zero posture. If you can't evaluate, that's going to have to be a nope.
Yes.
Right, or if they do the reverse and they don't use their voice, then that would be a nope on that.
Lots of dead air.
Okay, delivered extemporaneously, we have 5 points for a yep, 0 points for a nope. Keep in mind that we said in the assignment description, any speeches read word for word will receive an automatic F. And I don't know that I've ever actually needed to enforce that, because I think sometimes putting it on the table is like, if you read word for word, it gets an F. That is going to help most students avoid doing it. But this part in the rubric is where you definitely need to say nope for 0 points if they read the speech word for word, right? So if they have some limited notes, that might be okay, but we even said in the no on note cards, they shouldn't have any notes in their hands. They should be speaking from the gut.
Yeah, I do think that in this one, sometimes people have notes for their introduction and their conclusion. And so that would maybe be less of a problem, but it's in the body when they are trying to read to you what to do. That is never going to work. Yeah, that's a nope. Okay, and then are the delivery choices aligned with the intended purpose?
Yeah, so what is their body doing? If their topic is how to swing a golf club, then are they physically doing it? Are they just more suggesting doing it? Or if they are talking about how to use their voice, how to project their voice to an audience, then we would be evaluating them more on the delivery of using their voice. Like, are they doing what they're saying to do?
Yeah. Is it a good model of what they're supposed to be demonstrating? Are they actually demonstrating it?
Right. And does their delivery, that is not the words they prepared to say, but how they say it with their voice and body, does it help them meet their goals? Does their voice and body help them teach us how to play Clue or how to do a back handspring?
Yes.
And then similarly, filmed in a setting that reflects the topic. So that's about where and maybe what time of day it's filmed in a way that reflects the topic.
Yeah, so I've had people make really awkward, strange choices, and I'm not really sure, why they would be in different places. But because of the circumstances, I think a lot of people feel like they can only film it in, their bathroom. And so it's very strange for them to tell you, how to cook something, but they are, in their bathroom with their bathroom sink, and you're like, isn't really.
I saw one this summer, and a student was clearly on a pontoon boat having a party day with their friends, and that's when they filmed their how to perform CPR on a patient. So I just showed this to you. I think, or maybe how to check a heart rate and then perform CPR. And so it doesn't work at all, right? And so that would be that's an inappropriate matchup. If they were doing how to dive off a pontoon boat, then sure, they should be on the pontoon boat. That's great. We're not against pontoon boats. I think we're against checking a pulse and doing CPR when there's clearly people walking around with a beer and having a good time, and there's a lot of, that setting is not right for that topic.
No. But if you were going to change a tire, you would be outside with your car, changing the tire.
Yeah, and if they say, well, I didn't have a car, then I'm wondering, why did you choose that topic? So they have all the power in the world to choose their topic, and so it really should line up. If they're cooking, they need to be in a well-lit kitchen. If they're changing a tire, they need to be at the car.
Yeah, so then the next one also asks about the lighting and the angle and the camera orientation, that is it appropriate for the assignment? And it has a yep kind of and a nope.
Listen, if they do not film horizontally, that's not good for a YouTube tutorial, which is what we've asked them to make. If they did vertical, that's more for a TikTok tutorial. So that should at least bring them probably from a yep to a kind of. We're looking for 100% horizontal, and you might be surprised at how many of them are just going to film vertically because that's what they're used to doing for Instagram and TikTok. But this is a YouTube tutorial, and that's part of the assignment, so it should be horizontal so they maximize.
Yep, the space on the. So I would say that, any feedback in this will just only help them because the reality of them creating content for online audiences is really high. And so, even the NOPE gives them 2.5 points. And so it's understandable that there are these constraints that they are facing, but there are a ton of spaces available for all students on campus. I don't know if you've been in the residence halls, but they're so nice. Some of them even have green screens. There's lots of options of spaces that they can film in.
Yeah, there's practice halls, there's study rooms, there's quiet places outside.
There's the library. Lots of places. And then the lighting, you might tell them, I don't know if we said this before, but they can add additional lighting to help. A lot of them film so late at night that it's like, well, it was just dark out. And it's like, well, you're going to need to borrow a couple lamps from your friends to add extra lighting to the space to help. Video quality is smooth, finished, and ready to watch.
So if it's upside down, that's a nope.
Yes. If they have I've had students submit videos where they have an error in it, like a blooper, and full of profanity, and they keep it in.
Because it's hilarious.
Because they just were like, I don't know, I'm just done with it. I just want to submit it. And so I think the students who know that it's not really ready and they're just like, I'm done. I'm just submitting it. That's okay, right? They know going in I should have edited that, but that would have taken me some effort and time. And so they didn't do it, which is okay. And then you're just going to give them the appropriate feedback on what they are doing.
Or sometimes, I don't know exactly why this happens, and maybe I should look it up, but their volume is so low that even turned all the way up, you are straining. You really can't even hear it. That would be an example of the video quality is not so good. It's not something that they did in their delivery, or it's not really a choice they made,
right.
But that video is not ready to watch because you can't hear it.
And keep in mind that these speeches we are grading on what they give us, not on their effort or energy associated with it. So we have a lot of assignments built into the class intended to give them 100% for effort. If you do it, we're going to give you credit. Doing it gets you credit. And in the 4 speeches, which are the speeches that we are grading for nuance and for what they produce, we want to accurately score them what they earned. Topic is appropriate for audience and assignment.
That's one more chance to really do a little bit more on audience centeredness by just zeroing in on the topic. So it's a chance for you to communicate to them, I wish you hadn't even done this. I wish you'd gone a different direction from the start. Because this simply doesn't work either for, any audience or for this assignment. So if they chose something that's not a demonstration, that's not the right topic. If they chose something not visual, that's not the right topic.
If they chose something that they aren't in it, so they were like, I'm going to show you how to edit pictures online. It's only a screen capture of what they're doing.
That's in the topic choice.
Yeah, that's
the very start.
It's not appropriate for the assignment. It doesn't mean it's not a good topic. It's just not what we asked you to do.
Or if it's one of those that I said, if we don't need a video for it, if it's something that the directions on the box or simply Googling how to do it is more than sufficient, then if the speech doesn't actually add to the understanding or we don't need it, then that's probably not a good topic. Okay, so then you get down to overall effectiveness. This is going to appear on every speech the same way. This is the only one that it's a range. So simply clicking the button will assign the points that are the highest in the range. So you see superior is 25 to greater than 20 and a half. So if you just click superior and do nothing else, it's going to give them 25. But you may want to give them 21 or 21 and a half or 22. This is the only item on the rubric that you get to decide how many points within a range. So it's how superior, superior, 25 out of 25, perfection, or really freaking good at a 24, or how ineffective. Is it it really should be getting a 0 because maybe it's plagiarized and really egregiously, offensively ignoring the assignment. So it's so ineffective it should get a 0, or is it it almost passed? So that's a 16 and a half.
I think the overall effectiveness, it's so hard, this like global grading. A lot of you, especially second year students, might your gut might say this is a B speech, or this is a C plus, or this is an A minus speech, and this is your place where you're like, overall I would give it this grade.
Yeah, and you can kind of see where the points are landing, because if everything else is done, then if you know that the speech probably should hit right at about 120 out of 150, because in your gut you know it's a B minus speech, how many points are left? That if you just kind of do the mental math, oh, it only needs to get 13 more points to get it to that B minus. Okay, so then that's fine. If I give it a 16 and a half, it's still going to get a B minus, and that's what it probably should get. That's where I would do like almost like a manual adjustment so that the speech lands where it ought to.
Yeah. And I think it's more important on the bringing it up. If you're like, ooh, I graded all of this and this gets it's a D, but I think it's actually a C speech, then it's like, well, I might help them out a little bit here.
Right, so high intermediate then would maybe be its overall. It missed these items, right? So that's why it ended up so low. But still holistically, it was decent. So you want to communicate to them.
Because sometimes I think it turns out the other way. Like it's like everything was okay, but nothing was great. And so it ends up being a little bit higher than you feel like it should be, or the opposite, which is like they missed some key things, but in general it was fine, and then it would maybe you'd be able to compensate for that a little
bit. Right,
like
if they don't have an introduction, for example, then they couldn't have the attention getter one, it couldn't be intro separate from body, and they also lost the one on intro prepared audience for speech. So they lost a crap ton of points that you might feel like, okay, on this first speech, when we haven't yet covered intros, that feels like an honest mistake. They just missed the boat. But everything else was so strategic and so well done and so finished and so creative, then bump them up a little bit on the overall effectiveness to help make up for that was just like a simple oversight that they won't make that mistake again.
Right.
And then finally, it's in time. So that is, please don't think too hard about it. The time on this one is 3:30 to 5. And so that means that with the 30-second, grace period, if it's less than 3 or over 5:30, so that is 2:59 to 5:31, or 2:59 and less and 5:31 and over, we need you to click the over under box, so it'll automatically take a 15 point, which is a 10% deduction. Where we, on the mini speech, on the challenge, we said that we weren't going to accept it if it was over or under, but then at the end of the day we said, oh, please give everybody credit. But really, hopefully they use that as a warning, that they saw your little comment that said watch time, right? Because for real on this and all of the speeches to come, time is real. Especially because it's pre-recorded. So there's no reason, if they made a speech and then when they're ready to submit, they're like, oh crap, it's only 2 minutes and 10 seconds. They need to record it again. Or they're going to lose a letter grade. So it's okay. It wasn't something that happened, oh, they were prepared to do a 5-minute speech and freaked out. It's pre-recorded. They have the time.
Yep, and it's a skill. It's like all the other ones. Like learning to speak within a time frame is as valuable as the others, for your speaking events in life. When people say, I have you on the agenda for 14 minutes, you really need to speak about 14 minutes. If you go 10, they're like, ooh, now we're messed up. If you go 20, now we're running long. So learning to do it's important.
So then it should add up to a grade out of 150.
And we hopefully, when you just, you can click, make sure you hit save. If you didn't get through all of them, we want you to try to do as much as you can live and in person. And if you have to return to do, a few things, that's fine. But make sure you save it. Otherwise, it will be lost when you move to the next person.
I think the trick is to have read it really well in advance and a couple of times, and that you yourself have practiced clicking the buttons, because what you shouldn't have to do is read it when you're grading it. You should already know what effective is versus what impressive is. So then it's just almost like the clicking you could do blindfolded, because you're so familiar with the rubric. That'll really help you be able to grade in class. So you'll ultimately save yourself a ton of time if you do some prep in advance, really getting familiar with the rubric. Okay,
good luck with grading.